When every second counts, teamwork is important. The kind of teamwork you see every night at 6 on Channel 2, on The Big News with Jerry Dunphy.
The United States indicated tonight that it would agree to the future admission.
Clete Roberts.
Russia has test-fired an improved version.
Paul Udell.
Jerry, one of the unnoticed indications that homeowners are in trouble financially.
Gil Stratton.
Be the scene of the $100,000 American Pacing Classic tonight.
Bill Keane.
We're still going to get some Santa Ana winds, but they're not going to be nearly so stiff.
And from New York, Walter Cronkite.
Authorities withheld the names of the 25 indicted persons.
And Roger Mudd.
In Indiana, both sides appear to be playing.
Watch the men who know what makes the news tick. The Big News team. Every night at 6 on Channel 2.
You'll have a good time. You'll have a good time. CBS, where the good times always start. You'll have a good time. You'll have a good time. CBS, where the good times always start. CBS, where the good times always start. CBS, where the good times always start. When can we get away after the longest day? Touch our stuff for free, so easily. Something is in the air, pull up an easy chair, leave that turned down day. Come fly away. A smile can be seconds away from a tear. An adventure waiting right here. We'll turn it on for you. Come this September, this is a place to be. Hey there, remember, this is a place to be with ABC.
Tomorrow morning starts 3 days of moonwalks and moon rides in the lunar buggy as astronauts roam out of sight of their spaceship for the first time. NBC is the only network to schedule complete continuous coverage beginning at 6 a.m.
No?
Yeah, I suppose I'm
Okay.
supposed to ask you what on God's green earth you're doing this morning.
Oh, just flamingo dancing.
No, you mean flamenco dancing.
I mean flamingo dancing. I do it on one leg.
And a pot.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good.
Listen.
You're
No.
desperate, aren't you, Ralph?
Listen, this is a genuine. Ginny gave me this just before we went on. She heard me say the other day on the program, I said something nasty about Hollywood pansies, and she said, "Here is a genuine Hollywood pansy, and there's nothing wrong with it. Isn't it pretty?" We've got to have a little talk
Yeah,
with Ginny.
Ginny's from New York.
Yeah. Good morning. It's Tuesday, the 3rd of August, and it was on this date Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue, beginning his voyage from Palos, Spain to India and as you may recall, he missed. I don't recall it was before my time. The provisions of the new welfare reform bill hammered out by Governor Reagan and a committee of state Senate Democrats were announced yesterday, and the Senate's going to vote on that bill later this week to find out how it's going to affect welfare recipients and taxpayers. If it passes, we have the former state welfare chief and now special district attorney handling welfare fraud, Mr. Robert Martin, with us this morning to tell us about this reform bill and what it will mean to you and me. There are 2 openings tonight at the Century Plaza, at least according to Los Angeles Magazine. They put it this way. They said, Lainie Kazan unbuttons mouth and blouse at the West Side Room tonight. Other pop music openings, Cannonball Adderley at the Troubadour, Young Holt Unlimited at the Lighthouse, Ruth Price at Dante's, and Daddy Cool on the AM program. Daddy Cool used to be what teenagers said to their fathers during the early 1960s, maybe 50s, but no more. Daddy Cool today is an Australian rock and roll group, and they may be to the 70s what the Beatles were to the 60s. We're going to be talking with this group, and they have been promoted and publicized already on this, their first trip to the United States, as one of the great new rock bands. Smokey the Bear, who helps to prevent forest fires, is going to have a companion soon called Woodsy the Owl. Woodsy Owl is designed to get people to give a hoot about pollution. And Glenn Kovar is in charge of the Woodsy Owl project for the United States Forest Service, and this morning he's going to tell us about Woodsy Owl. Hey, there's a volleyball game at Cal State Long Beach Auditorium tonight. Wilt Chamberlain and Keith Erickson of the Lakers will be playing volleyball, not basketball, volleyball, and they're meeting one of the school's teams in a benefit for the college athletic program. Chamberlain could win very easily at volleyball, as he could dribble right over the net, you know. I mean, he could walk right over it. There are a lot of people who will pay a doctor to help them lose weight. Did you know that in Torrance, California, there is a doctor who pays people to get fat? Dr. George Bray does just that, and why he does and the results of what he's found, we'll find out a little later on our program. Los Angeles theater scene, highly melodic, company going on for the month of August at the Am-7, and a little less time, I think it ends about the middle of August, Knickerbocker Holiday at Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, and Mother Earth orbits into its first full week at the Huntington Hartford. I must get over to see that because people are talking about it. Trial of Catonsville 9 closed Sunday night with a full house and a hung jury.
Has simmered all of us since early last week. Still a high of 92 degrees is expected in downtown Los Angeles today. Yesterday, it hit 95, matching a 53-year-old record high. In the recreation areas today, the beaches will be mostly sunny, highs in the 70s. Water temperature is 72, and the red tide is still with us, too. Mountains expect mostly sunny skies. A few thunder showers are also on tap for the afternoon. Highs in the 80s there. And in the deserts, if you really have to go to the desert, it's going to be very hot. Sunny with afternoon thunder showers, temperatures of 100 to 115 degrees. Oh, you have a note for me there? Thank you. I assume that this is for all of us to hear. From our esteemed general manager, John J. McMahon. Oh, he is so sweet about these. He says, "Dear Miss Edwards, I have had to remind you before about the unladylike lies you were spreading about there being a statue of me in the parking lot. This time I'm wondering why you haven't mentioned the statue of me in the parking lot lately." Well, you see, I do my very best to please these people, and it's impossible. Actually, we were going to mention the statue as soon as we get the initials, which were carved across the chest, sandblasted away. They spelled something that we really can't talk about on the air. Yeah, I better go talk to him about it. See ya.
James Stewart, June Ellison, and Barry Sullivan star in Strategic Air Command. See the concluding half tonight on the Channel 7 6 o'clock movie.
That sun is hot already this morning. When I came on the lot this morning, I heard something I haven't heard before. There was a kind of general hum. You may be able to hear it through this microphone, I don't know. A general hum over the entire ABC lot, and I couldn't figure out at first what it was, and then it suddenly struck me. All the air conditioners have been going all night long here, except out on the lawn where it's already pretty hot. And the paper for Tuesday, August 3. Lockheed rescued Nixon Hales action. Bob Banfield has given you that story. Good story over on the left-hand side of the paper about the freaks taking over Wall Street and moving into other mining towns, Ward, Gold Hill, Caribou, Sunset, Chipmunk Gulch, in the spectacular mountains northwest of Denver. It seems that the long-haired kids have all moved into these great old mining camp and mountain towns up in the Sierras and the Rockies, and in some of them, 3/4 of the town's population are these young people. They call themselves freaks, and I guess they're going to make that word into something popular and nicely accepted. But in one of them, a Harvard Medical School graduate, a dropout from a paying practice, provides free medical attention. And all is not love in those communities, however. If you read the article, you find out that they've got all the problems and they don't have all the solutions any more than anybody else. Then the story at the bottom of the page, LA high of 95 matches 53-year-old mark. I think it's going to be that hot again today. And remember, the fire hazard is rising as the humidity drops. As the war goes on, little thing on the second page, as the war goes on many levels, even a beauty queen can be caught in the crossfire. One Arabic newspaper called it inexcusable behavior for Lebanon's newly crowned Miss Universe, Georgina Risk, to have her picture taken with Miss Israel. Have you no honor whatsoever, asked the paper. But other Lebanese editorialists rose to her defense. One columnist said, have over 20 years of lessons failed to penetrate the layers of mule-headedness and teach the critics that the Arabs are not likely to win the war with Israel by advertising themselves as thick-skulled fanatics. He's right, you know. The Arab Press Relation Bureau has been bad. Then there are pictures of the Lockheed people on the third page getting the word. Lockheed employees in Burbank break into smiles and cheers on hearing the newscast that the Senate had voted to save Lockheed. Oh, on page 4, fascinating story, the Earth wobbles. You ready for this? And every 7 years, that wobble makes the Earth subject to major earthquakes. They feel that this year is one of the 64 was the last one with the big earthquake in Alaska. 71 is 7 years later. And there have been some terrible earthquakes this year, not all here in California, of course. But fascinating story. How do they measure that the Earth wobbles 6 inches a day? I mean, how would they measure that? And wobbles as much as 72 feet over a 14-month period. Maybe they do have finally the reason for the earthquakes. There's a story on page 13 that is so infuriating I hardly even dare read it to you. A Senate witness said Monday he saw more than 560 rare eagles killed by shotgun from airplanes last winter in Wyoming. The ranchers were paying $80 a day to the hunters, or $25 per eagle. And they shot so many eagles, they had a whole haystack of dead eagles. Ready for that? Terrible. Oh, here's a story about that fountain in Griffith Park. You know, right at Ferndale, at the entrance to Ferndale. And people line up there to get water. And it's a fascinating story because for 12 years now, the water hasn't come from a natural spring. It's regular city water. There's some springs in the park, and it used to be spring water, but now it's regular water treated with chlorine, and yet people fill up bottles, and they claim it does just wonders for them. Art Buchwald has a fascinating column, All You Wanted to Know About Communist China. Read it. It's kind of a serious column for Buchwald. He says, I suppose it's a small price to pay for a free press, but I'm warning the media right now, there are just so many pictures of the Great Wall that the American people can take. And the main danger of this is that we may all turn off China before Mr. Nixon even gets there. And I got to read you this thing. I'm hurrying. I got to read you this thing about Jim Murray's column. He says, you might expect when Americans hit the moon, the first thing they would bring along is an automobile. The Germans would have brought a cannon. The Russians would have brought a slave labor camp, the French a mistress, the Italians a microphone, the Irish a bottle, the Hungarians a violin, the Chinese a flat iron, the English a butler, Texans an oil rig, and the Greeks a frying pan. He says it's not too surprising to Ralph Nader that the first lunar automobile turned out to be a lemon. It was a steal at $36 million, but the wheels wouldn't work. He says he thinks the horn and the dashboard clock and the radio didn't work either. And he says, talk about depreciation. This car depreciated at $10 million a day. Typically, the Americans abandon it on the highway. And that's our look at the news for Tuesday, August 3.